There is someone who loves you very deeply, and even so they have chosen to stay away. Before your thoughts start racing, pause for a second, breathe, because this is not random. This moment is not just noise passing through your day. The timing of this, the way it found you, the feeling it stirs in you, all of it touches something you have already felt in silence. A part of you has known for a long time that this distance was never simple, it was never empty, it was never just a lack of care. Someone close to you, or someone who once stood very close, feels something so strong that they do not know how to carry it. The feeling did not disappear when they stepped back. If anything, it grew louder in private. The more they tried to create space, the more they felt the pull inside. So do not read their silence as nothing. Their silence is full, heavy, overloaded with all the words they could not bring themselves to say. This is the strange truth of it. The deeper their feelings became, the more they wanted to hide. Loving you felt beautiful to them, but also frightening in a way they could not explain. It woke something up. It touched old places in them that had been closed off for years, places buried under fear, old pain, and long habits of self-protection. You reached a part of them that most people never even saw, and that changed them. It changed them in a way they could not undo. Stay with me, because this matters. You were never just another passing connection to them. You became a mirror. You reflected back their longing, their softness, their hunger to be known, and at the same time you reflected every wound they had tried not to feel. That is why the connection felt so real, and that is exactly why they pulled away. When two people truly meet beneath the surface, something shifts forever. That is what happened here. You touched parts of them they had carefully kept hidden, even from themselves. You found your way through walls they spent years building, brick by brick, after hard lessons taught them that being open could hurt. In your presence, those walls did not feel as strong. They felt unnecessary, and that scared them. You made them feel seen in a way they were not prepared for, not admired from a distance, not liked in a casual way. Seen, fully, and being seen like that can feel almost unbearable for someone who learned early that vulnerability was dangerous. You were not part of the life they had planned out in their head. You showed up and changed the shape of things without trying. There was ease when they spoke with you. There was peace in simply being near you. There was also that sharp and rising fear that losing you would hurt more than they were built to handle, so they stepped back. Not because they felt too little, but because they felt too much. You became the one person whose opinion mattered too deeply, whose presence reached too far in, whose voice stayed with them long after the conversation ended. And when someone matters that much, fear starts talking louder than love if the person is not ready. Listen closely here, because this next part changes everything. Their distance is not only fear, it is also a private confession. Somewhere inside, they believe you deserve someone more healed, more steady, more free from old damage than they are right now. They replay moments with you again and again. They turn old conversations over in their mind. They worry that their own pain would stain something they see as precious, so they hide behind silence, hoping time will make them ready, while time only makes the truth harder to ignore. Even while they stay away, they feel the bond in a place deeper than logic. They may try to explain it away. They may bury themselves in work, routine, noise, or other people, but nothing fully replaces what they felt with you. Every distraction eventually loses force. Every attempt to move on feels thin, hollow, incomplete. Their heart keeps returning to the same truth, even when their mind tries to argue with it. What they push down does not disappear. It waits. It grows quieter on the outside and louder underneath. That is the burden they carry. Their silence holds everything unsaid, every truth swallowed, every old lesson that taught them closeness leads to pain. You feel precious to them, but you also trigger the part of them that wants to run for safety. Right now they are testing themselves in private. They are trying to see if they can stand on their own before they try to stand beside you. But in the late hours, when the day is over and there is nothing left to distract them, the truth returns with full weight. They lie awake feeling everything they did not say. They know one honest step toward you would change everything. And that is exactly why they hesitate. Because once truth is spoken, hiding becomes impossible. Once they admit what you mean to them, there is no easy return to distance, no safe pretending, no comfortable mask. To love you openly feels to them like giving over something total, something real, something with no guarantee. And right now that level of openness still terrifies them, so they tell themselves they need the right moment, the right version of themselves, a calmer life, a stronger heart, a cleaner inner world. But healing does not follow convenience, and love does not wait forever for perfect conditions. Deep down they know that, and they also know that every day of silence comes with a cost. They miss you more than they admit, not in a light way, not like a passing memory that shows up and fades. They miss you like a place that once felt like home. They miss the ease, the calm, the sense that life became softer and more true when you were near. On the outside, they may seem composed, fine, busy, unmoved, but inside, the distance is its own quiet pain. It shows up in the moments when the noise drops away and there is nothing left to cover what they feel. They think about the words they never said, the apology they owe, the message they almost sent, the conversations they rehearse in their head and then abandon. They open your name on their phone and close it again. They write long texts and delete them. They imagine what they would say if fear were not standing in front of every sentence, and still they freeze at the same question. What if it is too late now? What if you have moved on? What if the space they created became a door that finally closed? That thought cuts deeply, because even as they are the one creating the silence, they are also afraid of losing you because of it. That is the cruel part of this kind of fear. It makes people run from the very thing they want most. It makes them protect themselves from love, until the protection starts to feel like punishment. And if they have seemed cold, hard to read, or unreachable, understand this clearly. That surface was never the whole truth. It was armor. It was survival. It was what they learned to do when feeling too much seemed unsafe. They built high walls long ago, thick ones, heavy ones. Then you came, and somehow, without force, you made your way through. That is why they stepped back. That is why they disappeared at times. Part of them keeps trying to rebuild those walls, but the effort keeps failing, because beneath all the fear, their heart still turns toward you. They keep telling themselves they need more time, more growth, more healing, more certainty. But time has become a trap. It has not made things easier. It has only made the truth press harder. Every quiet day adds more weight to what remains unsaid. Every act of pretending makes the inner split more exhausting. They picture their return in a perfect way. They imagine themselves suddenly strong, suddenly sure, suddenly able to say everything without shaking. But real life does not pause until courage becomes complete. Love does not wait still while a person learns how not to be afraid. Sometimes the only honest move is to step forward while your hands are still trembling. And somewhere inside they are beginning to understand that. They are starting to see that waiting for the ideal moment may cost them the very thing they most want to protect. They stand at the edge of a choice. Something in them wants to come closer. Something else wants to stay hidden. It is a pull in opposite directions. Fear says remain where it is familiar. Truth says move. Fear says silence is safer. Truth says silence is slowly starving what matters. Do not click away yet, because this is where the shift begins. Underneath all their delay, one thing has never weakened. Their love did not fade because of distance. The distance exists because the love grew too big for the version of them that was trying to control it. They are not gone in the way it may have seemed. They are gathering themselves, piece by piece. They are trying to become the kind of person who can carry what they feel without hiding from it. And there will be a moment, whether it arrives slowly or all at once, when staying away feels heavier than coming back, when silence stops feeling safe and starts feeling unbearable, when the heart becomes louder than the mind. That moment is building, even now in ways you cannot yet see from the outside. While everything may look still on the surface, something important is moving inside them. The distance forced them into a confrontation with themselves that they could not avoid any longer. Being apart from you held up a mirror to everything they spent years trying not to face. It exposed old patterns. It stripped away excuses. It showed them that what they once called strength was often just numbness wearing a serious face, pulling away, shutting down, isolating. These things may protect for a while, but they do not create peace. They do not heal anything. And slowly, painfully, they are beginning to see that, alone with themselves, without easy escape, they have had to admit that being away from you hurts more than they expected, more than they wanted to admit. It has become hard to deny that something about you made them feel safe enough to hope. And that hope frightened them because it asked them to become real. When they look back now, they remember the tone of your voice, the calm you carried, the way you listened without force, without games, without trying to make them perform. You gave them something honest, steady, clean, And because that kind of love was unfamiliar, it first registered in them as danger, not because you were the threat, but because goodness itself felt strange. They were not mostly afraid of you leaving. They were afraid of failing you, of not being enough, of being seen too clearly in all the places they felt ashamed of. But now a new understanding is rising. You never asked for perfection. You never needed them to be flawless. Real love does not demand spotless people. It asks for honesty, presence, willingness. And this truth is breaking something open in them, not loudly, quietly, deeply, like ice starting to crack beneath still water. The old way of hiding no longer fits as well as it once did. It still exists, but it does not feel natural anymore. It feels heavy, forced, tired, and that is often how change begins. The shift is not dramatic from the outside, no sudden collapse, no huge public moment. It is quieter than that. It happens in ordinary places, during simple tasks, in the middle of routine. A song comes on and they feel you there, not as fantasy, but as recognition. A corner of the day opens, and suddenly your absence becomes visible inside it. They begin to notice that forgetting you was never truly happening. They were only delaying the full weight of feeling. Now that feeling has matured. It no longer behaves like a passing emotion. It has shape, continuity, substance. It follows them through the day in quiet ways, changing the color of everything. They try old distractions again, busyness, noise, new conversations, new plans. But those things no longer cover the truth the way they used to. Part of their attention stays turned toward you no matter what else is going on. Not obsession, something deeper, unfinished presence, something unresolved that does not accept silence as an ending. Even when they talk to others, there is a subtle split in them, as if some part of them remains elsewhere, and that elsewhere always leads back to the same place, back to you, back to what was real but never fully spoken. They are starting to understand that distance did not simplify their feelings, it multiplied them. It removed the outer contact and intensified the inner conversation. What they hoped would fade has become clearer instead, and with that clarity comes a different kind of regret. Not the kind that only punishes, the kind that reveals. They are seeing exact moments where fear spoke louder than truth, moments where silence was chosen because it was easier, not because it was right. And once a person sees that clearly, it becomes harder to romanticize avoidance, harder to call it wisdom, harder to pretend it was necessary. They are beginning to feel the true cost of what they did not choose. There is a special kind of exhaustion that comes from living in contradiction, acting as if something does not matter while knowing it matters deeply. That exhaustion has been growing in them for a long time. It shows up as restlessness, fatigue, a kind of emotional heaviness they cannot fully explain to anyone. At night, when the outer world goes quiet, the inner world sharpens. That is when you feel closest to them, not as a thought they casually revisit, but as a living presence in memory. They replay moments with you not to escape reality, but because reality without closure feels incomplete. They keep returning to unfinished emotional sentences, trying to find an ending that was never spoken aloud, and because of that they have started asking deeper questions. What were they really afraid of? What did they think would happen if they stayed open? What did they lose by trying so hard not to lose anything? Slowly, the answers are becoming unavoidable. What they called self-protection was also self-denial. In avoiding vulnerability, they avoided depth. In avoiding depth, they avoided the full life of what they felt for you. The irony is becoming impossible to miss. The thing they believed would preserve them also limited them. Time, too, has surprised them. It did not weaken the bond. It refined it. It removed noise. It stripped away confusion. It left behind something essential that does not depend on daily contact to remain true. This unsettles them because it breaks the logic they used to justify staying away. Emotional truth does not disappear because it is ignored. It does not organize itself around fear. It waits. It remains. And now recognition is arriving in waves. In normal moments while doing ordinary things, they suddenly feel the absence of something they can now name clearly. Not only missing you, but missing the version of themselves that existed when they were connected to you. That realization matters because it shows them the bond changed them too. It shaped them. It brought out a self they cannot easily return from. And once that becomes clear, continuing exactly as before becomes harder every day. Something inside them is beginning to reject the old pattern. Not all at once, but steadily. like pressure building beneath quiet water. At first, the idea of coming back felt distant, almost unreal, a thought pushed into the future, a maybe. But the more they sit with their feelings instead of running from them, the more that possibility starts to gain shape. They begin to rehearse honesty, not like a performance, but like preparation for necessity. What would it mean to speak without defense? What would it feel like to stop managing every impression and simply tell the truth? Beneath those questions, something softer is forming, a longing not just for you, but for relief. Relief from carrying contradiction. Relief from splitting themselves between what they feel and what they show. Relief from the constant work of pretending distance is neutral when it has been costing them peace every day. They are starting to understand that returning is not only about reaching you, it is also about returning to themselves, to a version of themselves that is no longer divided, a version that does not have to negotiate every feeling into silence, a version that can live honestly without always preparing an exit. This changes everything, because once they see that distance had a price, they cannot unsee it. The silence stops looking harmless, it starts looking like slow loss, and that understanding creates movement. Not rushed movement, not dramatic movement, but real movement. The mind begins to loosen its grip on perfection, because perfection was never the true need. It was a shield, a delay, a way to avoid uncertainty. Now what matters more is truth in expression, accuracy of feeling, saying what is real, even if the words shake, even if the timing is imperfect, even if nothing is guaranteed. Control starts losing power too, not because fear vanishes, but because the effort of maintaining distance becomes more painful than the risk of honesty. They are beginning to see that keeping everything contained was never true safety. It was postponement. And postponement, seen clearly enough, begins to feel like another form of losing. When they think of you now, the thought is simpler, heavier in meaning, but less distorted. There is less argument inside it, less resistance, less need to justify or explain away what has remained true through time. Outcomes still matter to them, of course. They still wonder how you would respond. They still fear rejection. They still feel the ache of what may have already changed. But outcomes are no longer the center of everything. The deeper need now is alignment, to stop living out of sync with what they know, to stop carrying a truth in private that keeps asking to be lived out loud. Once someone realizes that suppression did not weaken the feeling, only preserved it, the old logic of avoidance begins to collapse. What once looked like protection starts to look like delay, and delay, when felt deeply enough, begins to look like loss. They no longer measure the bond only by outward contact. They measure it by persistence, by the fact that it stayed, through silence, through distance, through passing time. It stayed without maintenance, without constant reassurance. It stayed because it was real, and that becomes the most undeniable fact in their inner life. At this stage, the question shifts. It is no longer, is this true? That answer has already formed. The question becomes, who are they willing to be in the face of this truth? What action matches what they now understand? What kind of person do they become if they stop hiding behind fear? This is where inner change begins to turn into direction, not as a dramatic swing, but as a serious reordering. Responsibility starts to rise in them. Responsibility toward what they feel. Responsibility toward what they left unsaid. Responsibility toward the cost of remaining split between inner truth and outer silence. And once that responsibility lands deeply enough, stillness stops being neutral. It becomes a choice, a heavy one. And that weight is beginning to move them. Slowly first, internally first, but movement all the same. If you are still here, hear this clearly. Something in them is no longer organized around avoidance. Something in them is turning toward acknowledgement. That inner turn changes how they experience everything. Speaking to you stops feeling like some far-off scene in an imagined future and starts feeling present in their mind, like a real event that belongs not in fantasy, but in life. The old shield of perfection keeps losing value. It does not attract them the same way anymore because they are starting to see it for what it was, a polished excuse, a beautiful delay. What matters now is not sounding perfect, it is sounding true. Whether the words come out cleanly or not matters less than whether they are honest. And honesty has begun to feel more necessary than comfort. Fear has not disappeared. Let us be clear about that. Fear is still there, but its authority is weaker now. They can feel the cost of giving fear the final word. They can feel how much energy it has taken to manage silence, to build distance, to pretend nothing essential was happening. That effort is wearing them down. So presence begins to replace strategy, not outwardly at first, inwardly. They start meeting their own feelings directly instead of filtering them through excuses. When you come to mind now, the feeling arrives more cleanly, less tangled, more direct, more real. They are no longer asking only what might happen if they reach out. They are also asking what happens if they do not. And that question has force, because now they know that staying still is not harmless. It shapes a life. It narrows a heart. It extends a pain that already wants resolution. So they begin, little by little, to imagine return not as dramatic rescue, but as simple truth finally being allowed to breathe. A message, a call, a conversation, a step, maybe small on the outside but enormous within. They are moving toward the possibility of speaking without first rehearsing every outcome, toward the difficult act of letting truth exist without instant control. And once that movement starts inside a person, even quietly, something major has already changed. The direction of their life begins to shift. The center of gravity changes. They are no longer only trying to protect themselves from feeling. They are starting to ask what it would mean to live in a way that does not betray what they feel. So if you have felt this distance and wondered whether it meant the love was gone, understand the deeper truth. The distance came because the feeling was too strong for the version of them that existed at the time. They were overwhelmed. They were unready. They were carrying old pain that made real closeness feel dangerous. But what is real does not vanish just because a person steps back from it. It waits. It works on them. It keeps shaping them in private until one day they can no longer pretend they are untouched. That is where they are moving now, toward the point where silence feels heavier than honesty, toward the moment where fear no longer sounds wise, only tired, toward the recognition that love is not protected by distance. It is weakened by it, starved by it. And some part of them finally knows this. They know the perfect moment may never come. They know courage may not arrive all at once. They know they may have to speak before they feel fully ready. But they are learning that readiness is not always the doorway. Sometimes truth is. Sometimes the only real opening is the moment when a person stops running and says, "This is what I feel. This is what I could not say. This is where my heart has stayed even while I was gone." That moment is closer than it looks. Maybe not in the exact shape you expect. Maybe not on the timeline you wanted, but the inner motion is real. Their heart has not left this story. It has been wrestling, breaking open, changing in the dark. And when the cost of staying away becomes greater than the fear of coming near, they will not be able to keep hiding behind silence. They will move, they will speak, they will return to the truth they have been circling all along. And if you needed one clear message from all of this, let it be this. Their silence was never proof that you meant nothing. It was proof that what you awakened in them was too deep to ignore and too powerful to carry without changing.